The wind tore across the Wyoming plains like a restless ghost, bending the grass flat, carrying with it the iron scent of blood. Out there, in the fading red light, a figure stumbled, barely more than a shadow against the dying sun. Her dress was ripped, her face hidden beneath dust and sweat, and both hands clutched a strip of blood-soaked cloth pressed hard against her shoulder. She fell to her knees near the broken fence line of Colt Remington's ranch, gasping, trembling, whispering words the wind nearly swallowed. That's when Colt saw her. At first he thought it was just another drifter, lost or drunk. But as he strode closer, the sight froze him. The cloth, the blood, the fear etched in her eyes. Her voice was raw, cracked, desperate. "Please, don't take the cloth off." But Colt had seen too many wounds in war to ignore one now. He knelt beside her, rough hands steady as iron. Yet when he pulled the cloth away, his fingers shook. Not from the wound itself, but from what lay beneath. His breath caught, his jaw clenched. For a long, silent moment, the hardened rancher, the ex-soldier who had buried wife and child, could only stare. Whatever secret she carried, it wasn't just carved into her flesh. It was something darker, something that could burn this whole town to the ground. And Colt knew, without a doubt, that the moment he touched that wound, his quiet, lonely life had ended. Before we dive into the story, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we've got an extra special story waiting for you. One that'll touch your heart and blow your mind. Don't miss it. Colt dragged her into the ranch house, the boards groaning under their weight. The storm lantern cast jagged light across the walls, and for a moment it looked like ghosts flickered in the corners. He laid her down on the rough-hewn table, his eyes never leaving the wound he'd uncovered. It wasn't just a gash. It was jagged, deliberate, carved with a cruel hand. But that wasn't what froze him. Branded into her flesh, faint but unmistakable, was a mark he hadn't seen since the war. Colt's throat tightened. That symbol had written across battlefields, painted on banners, burned into towns left smoking. The men who carried it were killers, men who didn't forgive survivors. The woman's breathing hitched. Her eyes fluttered open, locking on his. There was defiance in them, sharp as broken glass. "You shouldn't have looked," she whispered. "Now you'll never be safe." Colt's fists curled at his sides. He'd told himself, after the fire, after the graves he dug with his own hands, that nothing left in this world could shake him. But the truth was, the past had just walked through his door wearing a stranger's face. He wanted to demand answers. Instead, all he managed was a single word, raw and hoarse. "Who are you?" The woman swallowed hard, as if the name itself might cost her blood. "Maeve," she said at last. "And if you don't send me away, Colt Remington, you'll die for knowing me." Morning broke harsh and colorless. Colt hitched the wagon, Maeve bundled beneath a worn blanket in the back, her face pale but her eyes never still. The ride into Dry Creek was silent except for the groan of the wheels and the crows overhead. Colt's ranch sat on the edge of nowhere, but the town was a powder keg. Dry Creek looked ordinary to strangers. A saloon leaning into the wind, a church steeple stabbing the sky, the sheriff's office sagging like it carried too much truth. But Colt knew better. Fear lived here. It curled in the corners of every shop, lingered in every muttered conversation. Folks had stopped meeting each other's eyes weeks ago. As Colt guided the wagon down Main Street, whispers followed them. Men paused mid-spit. Women froze with baskets clutched tight. Maeve pulled the blanket higher, but the stairs cut through like knives. A boot scraped on the boardwalk. Deputy Ruth Calder stepped into their path, her badge catching the gray light. Young, sharp, and stubborn as the land itself, she fixed her gaze on Colt. "You're dragging trouble into town, Remington," she said low but firm. Her eyes flicked to Maeve. "That woman, where'd you find her?" Colt's jaw set. "On my land." Ruth's hand hovered near her holster. She leaned closer. "You don't understand. The Red Mesa gang's been seen again. They're branding people, Colt. Sending messages. And if she's marked with their sign... Her words died as a shutter banged open above them. Colt didn't need to look. He could feel it. Dry Creek was watching. Waiting. Already deciding whose blood would spill next. The saloon doors creaked wide, spilling piano notes and the sour bite of whiskey into the street. Colt pushed through first, his broad frame drawing a hush from a few men leaning on the rail. Maeve followed, wrapped in her blanket still, though she felt every stare strip her down to bone. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the bitter perfume of cheap gin. Cards slapped on wooden tables, spurs clinked on the floorboards, and laughter rode too close to menace. Colt's hand hovered near his holster, but Maeve's eyes caught something else. Someone watching her. Not with hunger or suspicion, but with a knowing calm. Behind the bar stood Maria Vega. Tall, dark-eyed, with a streak of silver through her braid, she polished glasses like each one owed her a debt. She gestured Maeve over with a tilt of her chin. Colt hesitated, but Maeve stepped forward, drawn by something she couldn't name. Maria leaned in, her voice low, soft with an accent that carried both Mexico's warmth and the desert's grit. "New here," she murmured, studying Maeve. "I can smell it. And you carry more than a wound, Nina." Maeve stiffened, but Maria only slid her a cup of water, hands steady as stone. "In this town, survival is simple. Speak little, show less, and never let a man see how scared you are." Maeve's grip tightened on the cup. "And if I can't hide it?" Maria's gaze sharpened, cutting through Maeve's defenses. "Then you'd better learn to fight. Because Dry Creek doesn't forgive the weak." Maeve swallowed hard, her reflection trembling in the water's surface. For the first time since she arrived, she wondered not if she could escape her past, but if she could survive her present. The first shot cracked through the night like thunder splitting stone. Colt's hand went to his revolver before the echoes died. Outside, horses screamed, hooves pounding the dirt. Maeve froze, water glass still in her grip, as men scrambled for cover in the saloon. "Raid!" Colt growled, already moving. He shoved Maeve toward Maria. "Stay inside." But Maeve followed anyway, her blanket slipping from her shoulders as she pushed into the street. Dry Creek was chaos. Flames licked up from a barn on the far edge, and masked riders thundered through, firing into the air, their torches spilling sparks like falling stars. The Red Mesa gang. Colt drew and fired, one outlaw toppling from the saddle. Another swung around, rifle raised, but Maeve's scream cut through the noise. "Colt!" He spun, just in time to drop the gunman before the shot found her. Smoke rolled thick. Neighbors shouted, women dragged children from doorways, and the sheriff's bell clanged over it all. Maeve ducked behind a water trough, chest heaving, but she couldn't stop watching. Colt moved like he was back on the battlefield, calm, relentless, his face unreadable under the firelight. Then a rider leaned low, lashing at a boy frozen in the street. Maeve didn't think. She ran. Her shoulder burned, her legs screamed, but she yanked the boy clear as the outlaw's torch grazed past. The boy sobbed against her skirt. Gunfire, smoke, the hiss of fire. And through it, Colt's voice, fierce and raw. "Maeve! Get back!" But Maeve didn't. For the first time she wasn't hiding. She was standing in the storm. The fire crackled low, throwing sparks into the night like restless spirits. Colt sat across from Maeve, his hat on the ground, his revolver resting beside him. His hands, still streaked with soot and blood, trembled as he poured coffee into 2 tin cups. Maeve sat wrapped in a blanket near the flames, her face pale but her eyes steady. The boy she'd saved slept inside Maria's spare room, safe, for now. Yet her own pulse still beat in her ears, and her shoulder throbbed beneath the bandage. "You shouldn't have run out there," Colt muttered finally, voice rough with smoke. "Could have been the death of you." Maeve's lips curved, not in a smile but something sharper. "And if I hadn't, that child would be ash by now." Colt's gaze snapped to her, a storm gathering behind his eyes. He wanted to argue, but the words caught. He saw again the fire that had swallowed his own home, heard the screams he couldn't silence. His jaw tightened. I know what fire takes. Silence stretched. The only sound was the pop of resin in the flames. Maeve's voice softened, stripped bare of its sharp edges. I came west to escape chains I couldn't break. Thought I'd left death behind me, but it seems it followed. Colt studied her, the flames painting her face in gold and shadow. He saw courage there, fear too. But beneath it all, something he recognized, though he hadn't spoken it in years. Loss. He looked away, staring into the fire as if it might swallow him whole. Out here, nothing stays buried. Not the past, not the pain. You either face it, or it'll burn you alive. Maeve met his gaze across the fire. For the first time, neither looked away. The night was cold, though the fire still glowed in dying embers. Colt leaned against the post outside Maria's, hat tipped low, eyes scanning the quiet street. Maeve slipped out, the blanket pulled tight around her shoulders, her face unreadable. You're not just some drifter, Colt said without turning. His voice was steady, but inside it was iron grinding against stone. That mark. I know it. And you knew what it meant the moment I saw it. Maeve's breath fogged in the air. For a heartbeat, she seemed ready to deny it. Then her shoulders sagged. The Red Mesa gang didn't brand me because I crossed their path. She lifted the blanket, exposing the scar beneath the bandage. Her hand trembled, but her eyes didn't. They did it to warn me. To silence me. Colt's jaw tightened. Warn you from what? Maeve swallowed hard. From speaking the truth. They aren't acting alone. Someone in Dry Creek. Feeds them, gives them names, gives them targets. They're not just raiding ranches. They're marking people who get in the way. Colt straightened, every muscle coiled. You're saying this town's protecting them? Her voice cracked, soft but fierce. I saw the man. Back east before I fled. He's here now, hiding behind law and money. And if he knows I survived... She shook her head, fighting tears. Everyone near me will burn. Colt studied her, heart pounding. The soldier in him wanted facts. The man in him wanted to pull her close. Instead, he muttered low. Then we'd better find out who wears that mask in daylight. And in the stillness, Dry Creek felt less like a town, and more like a trap. The sun climbed high, but Dry Creek felt colder than dawn. Colt led Maeve down Main Street, her blanket traded for one of Maria's worn shawls. The townsfolk parted, not out of respect, but out of unease. Too many eyes lingered too long. Too many mouths whispered the same word. Trouble. At the sheriff's office, Deputy Ruth met them on the steps, her jaw set tight. Colt, she said low, glancing at Maeve. Words spreading faster than wildfire. Folks say you're hiding a Red Mesa spy. Maeve stiffened. That's a lie. Ruth raised a hand. I didn't say I believed it. But someone's feeding the fire. If the gang's got help in this town, they're painting a target on your back. The words hadn't cooled when the church bell tolled once, twice, then a rifle cracked. The bullet whined past Colt's hat, splintering the doorframe. Chaos burst. Maeve was yanked behind a barrel as townsfolk scattered, ducking into alleys. Colt spun, revolver drawn, eyes sweeping rooftops. And then he saw him. Jed Harris, storekeeper, Sunday deacon, the man who'd once shared whiskey with him by the fire. Rifle in hand, face twisted with fear and guilt. Jed! Colt's roar cut the air. What the hell are you doing? Jed's answer was a curse and another shot, wild but close. I ain't dying for you, Remington. They paid me to talk, and I talked. You think any of us can stand against Red Mesa? The sound of hooves thundered beyond the ridge. Dust rose on the horizon. Colt's stomach dropped. Jed hadn't just betrayed him. He'd invited the wolves straight to Dry Creek's door. He shoved Maeve toward Ruth, voice sharp as a blade. Get her safe. Now. Because this time, Colt wasn't sure either of them would walk away. The gang's dust cloud loomed closer, swallowing the horizon. Colt stood in the sheriff's office, fists braced against the desk, while Ruth strapped on her rifle. The air was thick with fear. Every shout outside, every boot step on the boardwalk echoed like judgment. "You've got minutes before they hit town," Ruth said. Her voice was firm, but her eyes betrayed the tremor beneath. "Half the men here will run. The other half will hide. Dry Creek won't stand." Colt's jaw flexed. He'd fought battles in fields of smoke and blood, but this was different. Here, it wasn't soldiers. It was neighbors. People who'd rather look away than stand tall. His silence stretched until Maeve slammed her palm on the desk. "No more hiding." Her voice rang sharp, her gray eyes blazing. "I've run from them across 2 states, Colt. I've carried scars, shame, fear. And for what? So they can burn everything in their path while I cower?" She stepped closer, trembling but unyielding. "You think I don't see you? You're just like me, haunted, ashamed. But damn it, we're still alive." Colt's stare locked on hers, his chest rising heavy. Memories clawed at him. The fire, the graves, the silence of loss. But Maeve's words cut through like steel. He wasn't alone in the ashes anymore. Ruth broke the silence, voice low. "So what's it going to be, Remington? Ride out and vanish, or stand your ground?" Colt's hand closed over his revolver, the old weight familiar. His voice was gravel, steady as bedrock. "We stand." Maeve's lips parted, a flicker of fear and relief tangled together. The decision was made. The reckoning had come. And outside, the thunder of hooves rolled closer. The first light of dawn split the horizon, painting the land in blood-red fire. Colt stood on the porch of his ranch, rifle across his chest, every muscle coiled tight. Maeve was beside him, a revolver in her trembling hand. She'd never fired in battle, but her jaw was set, her fear burning into resolve. Across the field, dust rose in a line of riders. The Red Mesa Gang, black scarves over their faces, rifles glinting in the sun. At their head, a man with eyes cold as stone raised his arm. Silence stretched, until his hand dropped. Gunfire erupted. Bullets ripped into the fence posts, glass shattered in the windows, dirt exploded at Colt's boots. He fired back, steady, deliberate, each shot measured. Ruth and a handful of townsfolk crouched behind the troughs, adding their fire, though their courage wavered. Maeve knelt beside a barrel, sighting down her revolver. Her breath shook. Her finger hovered. Then she fired. The outlaw nearest the barn spun from his saddle, crashing into the dust. Shock lit her face, then steel replaced it. She fired again. The gang swarmed closer, torches flaring. One leapt onto the porch, knife gleaming. Colt swung his rifle like an axe, the man tumbling hard. Another came from the side, but Maeve stepped forward, close-range shot dropping him cold. Smoke and screams filled the air. Horses reared, men cursed, flames licked at the barn. The world narrowed to fire, dust, and the deafening roar of battle. And through it all, Colt and Maeve fought back to back, their lives balanced on the razor's edge. When the smoke began to clear, the porch was slick with blood and the gang's survivors fled, their leader clutching a wounded arm as he vanished into the hills. The battle was won, but at a cost yet unseen. The smoke drifted low across the valley, gray ribbons curling against the pale sky. Dry Creek was silent but for the cries of the wounded and the scrape of shovels breaking hard earth. The Red Mesa Gang was gone, scattered into the hills, but their shadows lingered in every torn board, every bloodied street. Colt sat on the steps of his porch, shirt torn, arm bound in a rough bandage. His face was stone, though his eyes betrayed the storm beneath. He'd seen battles before, but it had been years since he'd held the dying in his arms. Years since he'd stood over the graves of neighbors instead of soldiers. Maeve knelt beside him, her own shoulder bound, her hands stained with smoke and blood that wasn't hers. She didn't speak at first, only pressed a damp cloth against his brow, her touch gentle, grounding. "You should rest," she said softly. He gave a humorless laugh. "Rest don't come easy." His gaze lifted to hers. I swore I'd never fight again. Thought I could bury the past, bury the man I was. But tonight, his voice cracked, low. Tonight I nearly lost you. Maeve's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to speak with strength, but truth won. And I nearly lost you. I can't keep running, Colt. Not from them, not from myself. If I do, I'll spend the rest of my life haunted. Their eyes locked, raw and unguarded. For the first time, Colt didn't look away. He reached for her hand, rough fingers closing around hers, fragile but certain. The war, the scars, the fire, they still lived in them both. But here, in the quiet ruin of dawn, they weren't alone anymore. The sun bled gold across the plains, washing the hills in light as if the earth itself was healing. Dry Creek stirred slowly in the distance, its people stepping out from the long shadow of fear. Life would go on, but not the same. It never was, after fire and blood. On a ridge above his ranch, Colt stood with Maeve, the wind tugging at their clothes. Below them, the land stretched wide and endless, scarred by battle yet alive with promise. For a long while, neither spoke. Words seemed too fragile for a world that had just tested them to breaking. At last, Maeve's voice broke the quiet. Back in Ireland, they told us the West was freedom. Wide skies, open land. I thought it was a lie. She turned, her gray eyes soft but steady. But maybe freedom isn't what you run to. Maybe it's what you choose to fight for. Colt's gaze lingered on her, rough features etched with weariness, and something he hadn't felt in years, peace. You saved that boy, Maeve. You saved me. He swallowed hard, the words dragging out like a confession. I buried my heart after the fire. Thought I was done with it. But I was wrong. Maeve reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining, steady against the restless wind. We've both lost too much, she whispered. But maybe together, we can stop losing. Colt looked out across the horizon, the wide Wyoming sky blazing with light. For the first time in a long time, he didn't see ghosts. He saw a future. And with Maeve beside him, he finally believed it was worth walking into. In a land scarred by fire, betrayal, and heartbreak, Colt and Maeve found not just survival, but each other. Their story reminds us that even in the harshest wilderness, love and courage can carve a path through the ashes. If you felt the fire, the heartbreak, and the hope in this story, don't write off just yet. Subscribe to Wild West Eternal Love for more tales of passion, sacrifice, and the untamed frontier. Your next journey begins with the click of a button.